Morning all. It is Sunday, June 12th. The wind this weekend has just been horrendous. Supposedly it's coming off the back of another tropical storm. I've so much I could be doing in the garden, but I don't want to plant anything because everything's still getting battered about. And although it's slightly calmer today, Friday evening, Saturday was just horrendous. I just didn't even try anything. I've decided though I'm not going to procrastinate. I'm just going to try and do something else. And this is a job I've been putting off for a while. So this little area here behind me technically isn't really my garden. It kind of spews out over the lane and is the boundary then between the road and our property. It doesn't really belong to anybody as such. It's just kind of like a random clump of trees, and I've just decided, well, I had decided last year I'm just going to take ownership of it, but now I'm actually doing that. When I say take ownership of it, I've enough to do in my own garden without taking this on, but it's because you can see it from my garden. I kind of want to undulate and blur that boundary, so I want to make this a continuation of my garden by putting stuff in here. When I say putting stuff in, I mean like some cow parsley. I'll shake some foxgloves about and I'll just kind of weed or edit the bits and pieces I don't want in it. Otherwise I still probably will let the nettles grow in here. It's really just the thistles I'll probably pull out. You can see that these little oxeye daisies have just kind of self-seeded, and I'll just tweak out, there's chamomile in there as well, I'll just tweak out bits and pieces that I don't want around it that's maybe choking it, and then just continue to let those self-seed. So I'm not really actively going to garden it, I'm just kind of edit it, I suppose. You can see behind me here I've already made a start this morning. So there's a wheelbarrow there full of weeds. A couple of years ago, I don't know how many years ago, seven or eight, when the digger drivers had took out some of the earth for the pond, they actually pushed all these bigger stones that we weren't using in the garden along here, just kind of to use them up. There's just this wee bit here. We kind of formed a set of stone steps, always with the intention of doing something with it, and just have never got around to doing anything with it. It's three large rocks there, and it walks up through, and it just goes up to this upper layer, which I'll take you up to. Yeah, the digitalis, the foxgloves there, have just self-seeded themselves into it. And then you can see behind, so this is my garden in the background. So normally I'm always from that side looking across. It's very seldom I'm on this side looking back the way. But there we go. And then yeah, you can see all the nettles behind me here. And I have no issue with nettles. I know a lot of people don't like them. But yeah, what I will do is I will tweak this area. I've actually deliberately let it overgrow a wee bit. I find whenever you let weeds overgrow to a certain extent, they're actually easier to pull out. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but once they get really happy, I often find smaller weeds in your garden sometimes are the trickier ones to get out, because they know they have to fight to compete, because you've probably been working in that area previously. Where I find if you let weeds grow and grow and grow, then they're kind of like, oh, nothing's going to harm us, and then they get quite comfortable, and then bam, you go in one day, you start pulling. I mean everything, even Dawkins, plants, weeds with big taproots will pull out dead easily if they're too comfortable. Now you do have to really let them get comfortable before you can do that. It doesn't just happen in a few weeks. I'm talking maybe months or a year and a half, but yeah, once they get quite established, they actually do become more easier to pull out. This area, as you can see, is really well established now. Going to tidy it up a bit, not gonna over manicure it. I do want it to look as natural as possible. What I am going to do is, I had lots of Acamela divisions from my garden. I mean, let's face it, Acamela lady's mantle is a plant that any gardener probably doesn't really want. It's something that not many people want, but I do believe right plant, right place, and Acamela I find is great in really dry soil. This is quite a wind prone tunnel as well, because the wind's coming across there from the sparrings. So it's a plant that can get battered. It's a plant if I come up here and tread on it when I'm weeding again in future, it'll survive. It doesn't look too kind of showy, if you know what I mean. I'm going to plant it along this rock face here against the drop, and it'll just slightly spew over. There's that wind picking up again. By doing so, it'll just kind of soften that boundary edge, and it's not the most decorative plant, and it'll not look too out of place in this setting. I do believe right plant, right place. Every plant has a purpose, and I'm not going to throw all my Acamela out because it's nearly a plant that you weed out of your garden rather than keep in, but I've just kept them all for this area because every plant has a use somewhere. Probably updates to come on this. There won't really be much probably for a wee while. I do plan to maybe phase this. I have so much else on in the garden that this isn't a priority project. It's really just because it has been so windy this weekend that I just thought I'm not going to waste time. I could be doing other things, but the wind's too harsh, so the weeding isn't really going to interfere with my timeline of what else I could be doing. So yeah, thank you as always for watching. Have a good weekend.